Hello everyone, and welcome back to the workbench. Today we're going to be doing a bit of a fun project here. We're going to open up some boxcar doors on some Homeshops Intermountain PS5277 Boxcars, decorated for Seaboard Central. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as I show you how to open up some boxcar doors. All right, so the reason I chose these Homeshops Intermountain Boxcars is when these came out, I remember seeing Mr. Tim Garland, who obviously a lot of you guys know has a Seaboard Central. I remember him doing some upgrades to his cars, and he noted that they needed to add weight to them. They were too light based off the NMRA standards. So when I went and was going to add weight to mine, you got to pull the bottom off the car anyway. I'm kind of looking at the car and I realized, well, hey, this door is a separately applied door, so why not go ahead and make a cool project out of this and open up one of these doors? Now, the easiest way to get these doors off is to take and use a chisel blade and just work along the edge and just kind of very carefully pry the door open. I normally work along the edge. It would be like to the right of the car if you're looking at it. That way, if you chip the paint, it's no big deal because the door will kind of be covering that up when you glue it back on. Once you've done that, then you got to go ahead and get the car separated from, like, the underbody separated from the actual shell of the car. Here you can kind of see me doing that, popping it off with the chisel blade. And that gives us our two separate pieces of car here. Our car body and then our underbody part as well. So now what I'm going to start doing here is that entire area that there is where the door was, I'm going to start pretty much drilling holes all the way along the edges of that area and start kind of slowly, I guess, Swiss cheesing that section out, if you will, just little by drilling holes and kind of slowly but surely working that all out to get it to where I can cut that section of the door out. So we're basically what I like to do when I'm doing these the Swiss cheese-ish deal here is I like to kind of like start and do like a hole on each side and then kind of start like doing holes in the corners and just kind of like work my way around a little bit. I don't like to like start in one spot and make like an entire perimeter way around. I just never cared for trying to do it that way. I like kind of trying to space them out a little bit and kind of work in different spots. When you're drilling these holes out, it gets to be kind of taxing on the old fingers there, especially when you're using these little pin vise drills and such. But I prefer doing it this way as opposed to using like a Dremel or something, because when you're cutting with a Dremel, you really run the risk of that Dremel blade getting a little excited and, cutting your entire boxcar in half. So I prefer to do it this way. It might be a little more taxing and a little bit more time consuming, but the basic ability of not, and the cutting out the risk, so to speak, of totally screwing up your model is a lot more important to me than being able to get this done the fast, easy way. So I prefer to take that approach here. Now, as you guys can kind of tell, we're just, putting some holes in, adding some more holes. Got about 3 on each side. Now we're starting to really do our Swiss cheese, where we start really filling in between the holes here, and by adding more holes. just kind of keep adding and adding and adding till it gets to a point where it's all the way Swiss cheesed, and you can actually start cutting in between the holes with a knife or a pair of pliers or whatever you fancy to connect the dots when it comes to that point. Alright, so we got about our last hole drilled in here. Right about here. And now we're going after it with our chisel blade. And all I'm doing is connecting my holes with the chisel blade, just carefully taking and using that to kind of tie all the holes together. Occasionally you're going to see you're going to need to add like another hole in a corner, etc. Just add those as you need to. Sometimes you got to use a little bit of a smaller drill bit when you do that. But it really just depends. Once you really get the Swiss cheese done, it's really hard to start drilling in between those holes. And there you can see we got another technique here. I'm using the pliers to cut the holes. I kind of alternate between the pliers and the chisel blade depending. And then boom, we got our boxcar door opened up there. Got our hole into the inside of the car. So with our hole opened up on the inside of the car here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start cleaning up around these edges. You're going to have little bits left around from the drill holes. So what I just do is I just use your classic X-Acto hobby knife here and just kind of start trimming away at the edges little by little to get rid of all those weird lumps from our drill holes. Just take your time. It's a bit of a time-consuming process, but you can get there. It just takes a little bit of time. Through the magic of videotaping here, we have both holes opened in our boxcar now for both doors. Now what we're doing is I'm fitting the underframe section into the car because on these cars they have that metal weight that's attached to the underframe, which we're not going to need where we're going here. But in order to hold that metal weight in the underframe, they make like this plastic lip on each side of that underframe that you can see through your boxcar door. And in the CR Steve world, that's a no-fly zone. I don't want anything sticking up that's not going to look decent. So what I'm doing here is I'm kind of marking it out. I'm marking where that lip's at so that way I could remove it from the underframe with the knife here. And just kind of trying to pry a little bit of it away as I can here, trying to work within the opening of the door, so to speak. You're never going to have it to where the bottom of the door will match with the underframe perfectly, just because with these models, the underframes are generally a little bit on the thick side, so it's never going to be perfect, but you can get it pretty close. But the best way I found to do it is to kind of fit it inside the door just to get a good idea of where you want to start trimming away at. That way when you pull your underframe back out, you can start trimming away and pulling the right spot out. As you can see here, just kind of working and taking a little bit out here at a time, just using the old knife a little bit at a time. And the purpose of doing this is because we're actually going to make a false floor to put in here, a false wooden floor to put on top of the underframe so that it looks like there's a wood floor in there even though there isn't. It'll just kind of give the illusion of that here. But in order to have that floor fit right, you got to cut that edge off so that way it fits flush with the sides. Now what I'm using here is some, I believe it's like a 005 sheet styrene. It's the really thin like sheet of paper styrene you can get. And I'm just cutting it to fit in the area we notched out here. Now when I do this, I try to make it so it goes a little bit in each direction past the door. And the reason I do that is so that way if you look in either way on the car, it'll look like that floor continues on, even though it might only go, you know, half an inch or an inch farther past the door. Now what I'm doing right now is a very important step. Now that I have my sheet of styrene cut to put on the floor, I'm taking and I'm scoring it, just making lines down it, all the way down it, just a little bit and a little bit, and I'm making little, you know, cross lines, etc. here and there. And the reason I'm doing that is so that later on, when we go to weather this, it'll give it the illusion of being pieces of individual wood instead of just being one solid floor. And we'll have a pretty easy time making it look like a wooden floor, even though it's not. Now, once you get the floor glued in, sometimes you gotta trim it a little bit to fit in the edges. Always test fit this stuff. Now, what we're going to do right now is we're going to go ahead and get our car up to NMRA weight standard here. And I'm going to use these little BBs because they're cheap and that's what I like to use. So when I'm doing a box car like this where I've taken the weight out of the middle and I have to have the weight on the ends, what I generally do is I take and I build little boxes out of styrene on each end of the car, and those are what I'll put my BBs in, my little weights in there. It just seems to be the best way I've come up with to do it. And then too, if you build these little boxes, when you look in from either end of the car, you won't really be able to see them with the door open because they're hidden on each end, and that's what we want. We don't want to see some stick-on tire weights in the middle, you know, that doesn't look very good. So I find that if you build these little boxes and put the BBs in them, nobody can really see that in there, and it's well hidden. And it also puts your weight right over each truck set and wheel set, so I'd rather have them set up like that, where the weight's over each end instead of being in the middle, where it'll make the car kind of operate goofy. So I just use scrap pieces of styrene from other projects and build them into a little box here as you guys are watching. Just nothing too exciting. I'm not taking precise exact measurements. I'm just making a box that'll hold these, so nothing too overcomplicated here. I'm just using that plastic cement stuff to attach them. And now the fun part, taking my BBs here and trying to separate them one to each side. And the more I looked at how many were in that little cup there, I started to come to terms with the fact that I was going to have to do like 3 or 4 at a time, because trying to do them one by one was going to take forever. So start dumping them all in there. And the last part of this, we'll take some CA glue, and I'll just dump CA glue in those boxes because they're fairly tight, so they're not going to leak glue everywhere, and the glue will hold them all in there, kind of make a little brick of weight. Now for the fun part, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do some paint work now. As you guys can see, I've got everything taped up a lot. We have our Badger Model Flex mud colored paint because it's pretty decent as far as looking like a wood, or even like a boxcar wood tan, whatever you guys want to call that. It's like a boxcar tan. It's, you know, it's a little bit dark for that. Could have went with a little bit lighter, but I kind of like the darker color in this situation. So we're going to start off painting our doors here. Just throwing a little bit of this mud on the doors. And then, as you guys can tell, we're also going to paint the floor of our car here once I finish painting the doors. And that's why I have I tried to tape off the underframe as best I could so I wouldn't have to worry about overspray. And I also don't worry about painting the sides of the weight boxes, just do the ends of them, where if you look in the car you see them. I also take this opportunity to paint the inside of the car. As you guys can tell, I've got the door taped over so we don't get too much paint bleed. But just to, you know, add a little light to the inside of that car, since it's a lot brighter of a color than the blue. Now, looking at it from this shot, you guys can really see that scoring I did earlier on our fake floor piece there. And especially now that we're going to put this panel line wash on the inside here, just to kind of really help make those lines and those seams in our fake wood floor really pop. I'm also going to throw a little bit on the doors as well, on the insides, as well as a little bit on the inside of the cars. You're not really going to be able to see it, but it's one of those things where if somebody wanted to look really close, they could pick out that, oh, that inside of that car is dirty, you know, just kind of add a little spice. Now we're of course going to do our fun part and reattach our underframe to our car, and of course our stupid little cut levers that always end up being in the way. Comment down below if cut levers drive you guys nuts whenever you're doing a project like this, because they always fall off, they always get stuck in the wrong spot. I hear them. sticking the door back on. I just use the plastic welder to do it, just put a little bit on the back. I don't like to get too carried away with gluing these on, because say I ever want to open that door a little bit more or close a little bit more, I don't want it to be like super glued on there. I just want it to be on there enough that it's not going to fall off, and I'm not going to break it off with basic handling. But there's our completed open door cars there. As you guys can see, I have two of them. I had one that I wanted the door a little bit more open, and one that I wanted it a little bit more closed because I wanted to see the Seaboard Central logo on it. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to start to dive into our weathering here a little bit, and this is a point where you're depending on which way you want to go with this project. You know, you could take your own way here. Since we're doing a bit of a weathered car here, I decided that all these like inside seams inside the doors and such where there isn't paint from the factory because the door was attached to the car when it was painted, I come in and I use a little bit of brown to kind of simulate a rust effect along these edges. Now, if you were going to do like this car being fairly new, you'd want to try and match the blue and do that. And of course, here we got some rail tie brown from Mission Models. This is the first time I used this paint, and I was actually trying it out with this, and don't know how I feel about it. I ran into a little bit of trouble when I clear coated. It seemed like the paint almost disappeared. I was kind of disappointed in that on one of my cars, but this one, it seemed to turn out decent. It just seemed like the rail tie brown was a little bit too dark. Would have been nice if it was a little bit like a shade lighter, but you know, all these browns are different, and that's the wonderful world of weathering, is all these colors you try and get are different. And just throwing a little bit of paint on the underframe here. Also doing the ends of the cars too, you know, and make it look like they're down a muddy side or a muddy branch line, you know. Throw a little bit of brown around the door, you know, a little dirt and grime. Throw a little on the bottom too for detail that you can see from the side, all the brake detail. I also just did a quick swipe on the roof as well. Not too much. I just wanted to add a little bit of a flavor of color up there on the top. Alright, now for the CR Steve personal favorites, here's some more panel line washes, because you guys know I can't get enough of these dang panel line washes because they make weathering easy. So all I do when I do these washes, I just take and dip my brush in some thinner, and then I dip my brush in the wash, and then I just kind of eyeball it. Sometimes they'll be a little bit heavy. I'll just go ahead and take a Q-tip and wipe some of it up to try and unheavy it, you know, try and tone it back a little bit, and where I'll grab a little bit more thinner and wipe that on to try and tone it down. Sometimes it's too light and I got to get a little bit more of the wash on there. It just kind of depends. You really need to use your eye for this, and if it seems like whoa, that's too much, then just wipe some off. If it seems a little bit like you can't see nothing, add a little bit more, and just kind of go by feel here, you know, just a little bit, and take your time. Weathering is really a layers thing, and this is a very important layer in my opinion. Now here we can see a car that I already did some rust work with this paint, with this marker here, and we're about to go ahead and do that same work here with the marker on this car. Now I want to apologize in advance because it's going to be kind of hard to see, because at the time I recorded this I didn't have my current camera setup I have now, so of course I'm trying to look at the car, but the camera's mounted directly above the car, but I'm trying to look at what I'm doing. But basically what I'm doing here is with these markers here, I'm coming in and I'm making little dots and little rust spots, and then I'm wiping them off the Q-tip, because what it does is it streaks that first mark you made down. Then I come back and I put another little dot in that same first spot, and that's kind of like the dark rust spot, but you have that streak from where you wiped off the first shot of it that's there, that kind of gives that streaking rust effect. Now, with this car, I really didn't get too carried away, because these cars would have been fairly clean in the 90s when I model, and I tend to really weather the snot out of a lot of things, so I decided to take a little different approach here with this old Seaboard Central car and not get carried away for a change, and just kind of be a little more prototypical on something that's not prototypical, if that makes sense. But I'm just adding little spots of rust around the doors here. I had little like chip marks where like the forklift fork could have hit the side of the car and stuff, and just little things like that, little details. But nothing too wild and crazy here. The main thing is just kind of doing little spots here and there, and not getting too excited and doing giant, massive rust chips or anything if you're going for a light weathering job. So Both of these cars, when I did them, just came out a little bit different. I went for a little bit, like one car had a little bit of a black streaking coming off of some of the lettering and stuff, and this one I think I went with a little bit more rust around the door, if I'm not mistaken. But overall, this was the first time I used these markers to do this. I was really happy with the result when it was done. I've been really using them more and more on a lot of my weathering projects here recently. Always fun when you find a new technique or a new something that really makes weathering easy and simple. But as I continue to do this here, we're almost to the end of this project for today. I'd like to thank everybody for watching. It's just always here as you guys watch me finish this up. And I'd like to note that this video I recorded this almost a year ago, and I just finally got around to editing this together. I've been really trying to get better how-to videos. This is kind of the last of the old guard of stuff that I didn't really know how to film very well, especially at the workbench, because you're trying to look at things and work on things, but you're trying to video it, and I want to be able to show you guys how to do more, and then be able to do more of these how-to videos. I'm just still working on trying to get the camera angles and everything right, so hopefully the future ones will be a little bit better as far as being able to see things, and hopefully I won't have my camera go into time-lapse mode like it was what it ended up being at the beginning of this video, which is why the beginning was a little bit wonky. But hopefully we have all those problems worked out and figured out so that we won't have that issue happen again with the goofed up video. But as always, I'd like to thank everybody for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next video.